Okay, welcome everybody. Today we will be discussing about various type of filters which we use in photography. So we'll be covering UV filters, ultraviolet, and neutral density filters and polarizing filters. So these are the three filters I have chosen for today's discussion. So I'll just go through what each one of them for those people who don't know, and those people who are already using it. Please ask questions why you want a particular features or particular filter, and what each one of those stops and other things we talk about. So I'll explain in detail as the question comes. So please do ask questions, because without questions, me telling the whole thing, it will be a one way topic. So I expect you to ask some questions. However silly it is, it's fine. I'll answer those questions. So let's start with what are filters. Filters are a sort of a glass which you put in front of the lens, and because it's another glass, it will in turn deteriorate your lens's quality. This will happen with ND filters. This will happen with uh, polarizing filters. This will happen also with the UV filters. So before you put those filters in front of your lens, you have to make sure that the quality of the glass what you're putting is very good. Now, what is a ND filter? ND stands for neutral density filter. Now, part of the word neutral density, in the sense it doesn't alter the color. Imagine a welding glass is also a filter similar to neutral density, but it is not neutral. If you put a welding glass in front of your uh, lens, I mean, it is used. For example, if you want to do a solar eclipse shoot, if you don't have a filter, you can use one of those welding glass filters in front of the lens to shoot solar eclipse. But it creates a sort of a funny purple violet color. So it is not neutral. Whereas these neutral density filters are made in such a way that they don't alter the color of your picture. So the color remains exactly neutral and the density changes. So with the density, what happens is you are cutting light. So you can have one stop which will make you increase one f-stop of light. That is either in aperture you have to change one stop, or shutter speed you have to change one stop, or ISO you have to change one stop. That becomes one stop ND filter. Similarly, 2 stop, 3 stop, 6 stop, 10 stop, 15 stop, even 22 stops filters are available. So these are used basically to cut down light and create a slow shutter speed effect. So if you want to shoot waterfalls where you want that milky look, that is where you use it. If you want to take a picture of a sea where the waves are totally vanished, you need that sort of filters. So it's creative type of filter which is used. So it smoothens the water movement. It achieves a shallower depth of field in a very bright light. Wedding photographers can use this to cut down afternoon light, so that you can get a very shallow depth of field. It can also reduce the diffraction by enabling a larger aperture, because the diffraction is one of those features which happens when in the afternoon, say if you go to f16 value. So in such a case, you can reduce the diffraction by using these ND filters. It can make moving objects less apparent and less visible. For example, if you've gone to a tourist place where there are a lot of people moving around and you don't want that effect to happen, all you need to do is put a camera on the tripod and put ND filter and take it in a longer shutter speed. So all the people who are moving vanish from the picture. And it is also used for it to introduce a blur to convey the motion in a moving subject. So that's what ND filter stands for. The other type of filter which is very popular is a polarizing filter. Now, the polarizing filter, what happens is it cuts a ray of light in a particular angle. So the light contains multiple wavelength of light rays, and if it cuts on one particular angle, that particular angle gives a particular feature where reflections from other objects, for example, if you are looking at uh, a pond which is filled with fish and you are trying to take a photograph of that particular pond, what happens is the light ray falls on the top surface of the water and then reflects back. So that reflection can be cut so that you can see the fishes using this polarizing filter. That's one of the reason why you use polarizing filter. It can cut this sort of reflections from the water, from the leaves, make the leaves will look much better, or the sky itself. Sky will look bluish, more bluish than it ordinary is. So these are the advantage of polarizing filters. So polarizing filters can be used in multiple places, and they are one of the essential filters you have to think of if you are doing a landscape photography. The last filter almost everybody uses, but I hate, is a UV filter. Now, UV filter had its job during the film days because the film used to be sensitive to ultraviolet light, and that's why your sky used to look pretty bad. But the digital cameras, the present day DSLR or mirrorless, don't ever get affected by ultraviolet lights. The job of the UV filter is basically to cut ultraviolet light so that the normal spectrum of light what we see through our eyes are the only one which are recorded by the camera. Now, why do people use UV filters? This is usually sold along with the camera. When they buy a camera or a lens, the dealer usually says, you need to UV filter to protect that front glass of your lens, and he sells you that useless piece of glass. And most people really believe that's the one which will protect the lens. But usually, what really happens is, if you have a UV filter and you try to take a photograph in the night, say a street light or a deepa, our lamps, so those will cause a reflection on that UV filter, so that you get double images. So street light will look double, and the lamp will show two fire this thing. So all the night photography, you'll be really having a problem with those UV filter. Now, does it really protect? No, it doesn't protect the front of the glass, front of the lens, because every lens manufacturer hardens the front of lens. So the front glass is always hardened glass. So, and you are also putting this particular cheap lens filter in front of an expensive lens. So invariably your quality deteriorates. So I would advise go for a lens hood to protect the front of the lens than using a UV filter. And if you are using a UV filter, when you are shooting, please remove the UV filter and then shoot. The only place where I will use a UV filter is in a very dusty environment, like let's say that I'm shooting a rally or Kambala, where there is a chance of splash of water, and I can easily remove this UV filter and clean it and then just put it back. But it's been nearly about 6 years since I've stopped using UV filters. So this is a brief introduction to each one of these filters. So if you want more elaborate discussion, let's have a questions. So if you want to ask questions, just raise your hand. I will allow you to ask questions. Girish is also there to help you.
Please don't hesitate. Whatever question you have, you can just raise your hand. I'll bring you up and you can ask the questions. And while we wait for the questions, Krishi, I have a question for you, specifically relating to the polarizing
Yeah,
filter.
filter.
Now, the polarizing filter, as you said, it cuts rays in one particular angle.
Yes.
But when we have to use it, what is the best direction in which to use it? In the sense, uh, For example, let's say I'm shooting the surface of a water with the sun in front of me. Would I
Okay.
use a polarizing filter in that situation, or when the sun is to my right, that is at 90 degrees to
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
camera?
Okay. Uh, Polarizing really works well either in the early mornings or late evenings. So it's either after 4 o'clock in the evening or before 8 o'clock in the morning. So afternoon period when the sun is right on the top, the polarizer doesn't really make much of a difference. It makes a very very minute difference, but not much of a difference. But that's because the light rays are straight. So only when they are angulated, when the sun is either on east side or on the west, so one of these horizons, that is when you get a better effect of a polarization. So afternoon polarizer works, but it's so minute that it's almost useless. So I think you have to use it either in the morning or in the evening.
Krishi, with the polarized filter, you can also rotate it to change the angle, right? Because
Yes,
I use the
it has got,
polarized filter
yes, it
and
has got
rotate
two
it
rings.
slightly.
Yeah, there are two rings in the polarizing filter. One ring fits to your lens. That is a tightened ring. Then there is a free flowing ring on the outside which moves 360 degrees. So how do you know the polarizing effect? Okay, either point it at the sky or in the water, and then rotate the polarizing filter, that ring, which is a free moving ring. Rotate it till a point where you see that the reflection just vanishes. So if you are looking at the green leaf, that if there is a reflection from the leaf, that reflection just vanishes. So you can see everything clearing up in front of your eyes. So that's how much you have to rotate, and there is no marking on the polarizing filter. It won't tell you exactly this point to this point it will clear up. It is just rotating, but at one point you will actually see through the viewfinder that it's cleared. If you point it to the sky, you can see that the sky suddenly become darker blue if it's a blue sky. If it's a cloudy sky, you can't make out.
We, Krishi, we also can use the polarized filter. Like suppose you're trying to take a photograph of a house with a
Okay.
lady or a person standing behind a glass
Okay.
window.
Yeah.
And if the light is reflecting off the glass plane, we can use a polarized filter, rotate
Yes.
it so that the person inside is also visible.
Visible. It won't be that effective if you are taking it at about 12 o'clock position. If it is early morning and evening, it will be better.
It works also from inside the window outside.
Yes, inside to outside also it works. Outside to inside also it works.
Okay.
Any reflection which is falling on the front of the element, like if it is a leaf, it is front of the leaf or front of the glass, that can be eliminated. And different mm, transparent materials have a different property. Some of them don't polarize at all. For example, plastic doesn't polarize. You can't make a plastic window disappear. That doesn't polarize. Whereas a glass window polarizes, leaf polarizes, water polarizes. So there are different properties, but you can, for most of the time, I think polarizer will be really helpful. And remember, when you are using polarizer, you are also losing one stop of light, nearly one stop of light.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Kindly raise your hands if you have any questions, and I'll bring you into the speakers panel.
Bhanu Prakash, you were asking earlier.
Yes, sir. I got my answer.
Okay, I'll explain that ND stops of ND filters. So basically, what happens is, you know, say neutral density filter, you can buy in different uh, darkness gradients. So the lowest one is one stop. That means it will cut on one stop of light. That is, we use f stops in photography to denote between, say, f2 to f2.8, 2.8 to f4, 4 to 5.6, and all those gaps are basically considered as one stop. Or in the shutter speed, if it is 1 by 100 to 1 by 200 or 1 by 100 to 1 by 60, so these are all considered as one stop of light. So that stop of light is basically what is lost with the ND filter. So you can buy three stop ND filter, 6 stop ND filter, 10 stop ND filter, and generally I suggest people go for 2 ND filters if they plan to do some waterfall photography or slow shutter speed photography. Buy a 3 stop ND filter and a 6 stop ND filter. You can combine both of them, make it a 9 stop ND filter. So ND filters are useful, especially for that purpose. And in the market, you get two type of ND filters. One is circular, where you can thread it to your front of the lens, and the second one where you have a mount which is threaded to the front of the lens, and then you have a square filters, either with 100 mm size or 150 mm size, which can be slided into that outer mount. So those are the type of filters available. The cheaper ones are the screw type filters. The costlier ones are the one where you need to have a mount, as well as those slidable filters. Slidable filters have some advantage because you can do all the focus, and at the last moment you can slide it. Whereas the screwable ones, once you screw in darker filters, it is very difficult to see your subject through the viewfinder, because the filter is so dark that just can't see the subject at all. So if you miss the focus, all your photographs will come out blurry. So that's a problem, but they are cheaper.
Krishi, can I ask you one question?
Sure.
Normally in waterfall photography, the speed is 1/10, right? 1/10 or 1/8 is more than enough to blur the water flow.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So if I've gone there at, say, by the time 11 o'clock or something, and the sun is little harsher that day because it's a summer time, so I have to go down to that's why I have to calculate what is the ND filter I have to use.
Yes, ND filter you have to use. Your main idea is to bring down the shutter speed to that level.
Without ghosting, without what is that, whitewashing the whole image, right? That's the idea.
Yeah, that's the idea.
So if I can do it without the ND filter at 1 by 60, so I have to drop it to by 4, 5, 6 stops, right?
6 stops, yeah.
To get to 1 by 10th. Okay.
60, 30, 15, 5. No, you need 5 stops. 5 stops, not 6 stops. 5 stops. So 6 stop filter will give you that ballpark, and then you can slowly change the aperture to whatever you feel like. Ideally, f8 or f11 is the ideal aperture. Don't go for a very small aperture just to get that depth of field. Don't go to f22, f16. Those are the ones which give you what's called diffraction. So your image will become softer. So stop it at around, if you have a full frame, you can go up to f14. If you have a crop frame, something like f12 or f11. That's where you have to stop.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Just raise your hand.
If anybody has questions, please raise your hands.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Prakash, Kelly. Go ahead.
Sir, portrait shoot ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಅದು ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ಪರ್ಪಸ್ ಫಿಲ್ಟರ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಸ್ಕಿನ್ ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೆ. ಆ ಥರ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಇದೆ. ಸ್ಕಿನ್ ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಫಿಲ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಈಸಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ಗೆಟ್ ಒನ್ ಆಫ್ ದೋಸ್ UV ಫಿಲ್ಟರ್ಸ್. ಮತ್ತು ಈ ವ್ಯಾಸಲಿನ್ ಸಿಗುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಸೊ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಯೂಸ್ ದ ವ್ಯಾಸಲಿನ್ ಆನ್ ದ UV ಫಿಲ್ಟರ್. that will give you almost a similar effect. So skin softening effect ಗೆ cheapest option is get Vaseline and UV filters. So the same
lens
effect.
flare and barala sir, ಅದು light
Lens flare ಬರಲ್ಲ.
Okay sir.
Yes, Shajin, go ahead. Ask your question.
Hello.
Tell me, Shajin.
Yes, Shajin.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Shajin
Good
here.
evening. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to ask, sir, this filters, no, is this of like standard size in the sense like irrespective of the lens brand, we can use it like one-time investment, right?
Yeah, it is one-time investment. That's why you buy the largest filter size your lens have. Suppose you have 3 or 4 lenses, let's say, and
Okay.
let's say one is about 58 front diameter. That is a filter thread. The other one you have something like 64, and the largest one has something like 77. So then what you do is you buy a 77 set of filters. Don't buy one for 77, one for 68, one for 54. Buy the largest one. And largest one you can think of ever buying. So most of the lenses, the largest size what you can get is 82. That's the maximum size you can go. Like there is 1635 lens in Canon which has got that larger front diameter, f2.8. So that lens has got 82 diameter. That's all. I mean, you can't go beyond 82. So for most people, I think 77 is a sweet spot. So when you buy a filter, go for 77 filter. Then you also have what is called step down rings. So this particular rings allow you to bring that 77 filter to attach to your say 56 front thread. So these are just metal rings which on one side they are 77, on other side they are 50, 55, 56 or whatever your lenses are. They are cheap, and in fact on Amazon you can get a whole set for not more than 300 rupees. That is every permutation combination you can think of.
Okay.
So that's the best way of doing it. So you can just have one set of filters. That's all. The other option is to buy these square filters. Again, they also require that sort of ring to fit to the lens. So whichever lens you have, think of the largest size, and then you can get these step down rings.
Okay, in case of this square filters, we have this 150 and 100 two different
yes.
two sizes, different sizes, no?
Yes, two different sizes, and commonly used is 100 unless you have those very special lenses which are quite big in size.
Okay.
So only those require 150 these are almost very wide angle lenses. Those are the ones which require that. But for most people, 100 is a very nice size as far as square filters are concerned. And they also come with the polarizing built-in. The square filter mount has a built-in polarizer. So polarizer comes when you're buying the mount. There are few companies which make these filters. Haida is one of them. Nisi is another one. Then there is Lee filters, which is pretty expensive. B&W, there are Breakthrough. There are so many brands are there. Don't go for those very cheap Chinese filters. They are extremely fragile, and many of them are made up of resin which scratches very easily. So go for glass filters.
Okay, and this mount is universal, no sir? Like this
no,
filter
it is
mount
not universal. In fact, I mean, if you buy a Haida mount, you have to go for Haida filters. If you go for
universal,
it's
universal in the sense like all like lens we can attach,
yes,
irrespective
exactly. There are these rings are available which are for different sizes. So everything connects to that 100 filter mount.
Filter mount. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have questions? Please raise your hands.
Doctor, meantime, and others are thinking of question.
Sure.
There is also a ND filter with two tone, right? One portion more darker than the bottom portion.
Yeah, this is called a gradient ND filters. So the use of them is mainly, you see, when you take a landscape photograph, you find that the sky is always brighter than the ground. So if you want to have the sky also coming down much more than the ground, then you go for this gradient filter. So what happens is, this is usually a square filter. It's not a round screwable filter. It's usually a square filter. So in the square filter, half of it is having a different neutral density. The other half is either clear or having a different neutral density. Most of the time, the lower half is clear. The upper half is sort of a graduated and having a ND filter. So it's only half of it you are making it darker, and some of it is very hard cut. Some of it is a smooth gradient option is there.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else has questions? Please raise your hands. ಯಾವುದೇ ರೀತಿಯ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಕೇಳಬಹುದು ಫಿಲ್ಟರ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟ ಹಾಗೆ.
Wedding photographers who want to sync their flash below the sync speed, that is, most of the time it's 1 by 200 or 1 by 250th of a second. What happens is, suppose you are shooting in the afternoon and the light is too bright. So then what happens is, your shutter speed, it's showing that 1 by 1000, and you are gone into ISO 100, and f8 or f11 you have already chosen. But the problem is the shutter speed is too high. So if you want to cut down, that is where you use the ND filter in a wedding situation. So you can use either 3-stop or a 6-stop ND filter to cut down the light, so that you can get a shallow depth of field and a better shutter speed along with the flash. So while using flash also, you can use these ND filters and get that particular effect.
But then we have to increase the flash power?
No need of increasing the flash power. Flash power will be same, because you are basically cutting down the ambient light. The flash is not really exposing ambient light. The flash power, you can put it in almost full power and you can take. There are a lot of people who go for this high speed sync thinking that that really works. But using an ND filter and cutting down light is a much better option than going for the high speed sync. And if you have multiple filters, you can stack them. For example, you have a 3-stop and a 6-stop filter. You can stack them together and stack one top of the other. So 3 plus 6 gives you effective 9-stop.
For that to happen, the mount would have to have the option, right, Krishi?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would most mounts have that option?
Yeah, square filters
stacking
always
multiple
come with the
filters?
two filter mounts. Okay.
Okay.
And rotating filters, they always have a female thread on top of each other. So you can use
Right.
one filter tighten to the front of the another filter.
Okay.
Square filters, you can add maximum of three filters, but most of the time they come with 2, and they also give you a spare this thing in case you want to add one more filter.
Okay. ಯಾರಿಗಾದ್ರೂ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದೆಯಾ ಕೇಳೋದು ಫಿಲ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ? ಗೋಪಾಲಕೃಷ್ಣ ಅವರೇ ಕೇಳಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ.
Just now at the beginning I heard someone had doubt about what is f-stop and how to calculate it and all that.
Yes.
Would you please explain that?
Okay, f-stop is sort of a
I know, but
no, I'll explain what f-stop is. So when we calculate aperture, shutter speed, or ISO, or power of the flash, we always use these sort of mark where the light falls by what's called a stop. This stop is a sort of a currency which we use to take out from either from aperture or from shutter speed or from ISO or from flash power, to get the balance so that the final exposure is maintained when we change these parameters. For example, we talk about ISOs. So 100 ISO to 200 ISO is one stop of light. That means it cuts the light by half. So from 100 to 200, the light is cut into half. So whatever the amount of light which was there, you are now getting half of that light when you go from 200 to 100. Now the aperture, let's say that you are in f 5.6. Now from 5.6, the next step is f8. So 5.6 to 8 is one stop of light. So when you go from 5.6 to f8, you are again cutting one stop of light. So if you want to compensate one of these parameters, the same thing about shutter speed. For example, you are in say 500th of 1 by 500th of a second, and then you go into 1 by 250th of a second. That is one stop. So all these are stops. So these are sort of a currency you take and give. So that stop is also baked into these filters. So when somebody says I'm buying a 3-stop ND filter, that means he's cutting the light by 3 stops. So for example, let's say that you go to a beach and you want to have a very nice waveless sea. So you tried your best to reduce the aperture f11. Probably that's where you have to stop because you can't go beyond that. So stop at f11. Then you go to the ISO 100. That's the lowest what you can do, and then you check the shutter speed. The shutter speed says 1 by 30th of a second. So at 1 by 30th of a second, you are not going to get that waveless sea. So you need to drop at least 6 stops to get a beautiful silent sea where absolutely no waves are there. So let's calculate. So from 1 by 30th to 1 by 15th, then 1 by 8th, 1 by 4, 1 by 2, then 1 second. So that is where 1 second comes. So when you are using 1 second, that's a 6 stop drop from 1 by 30th to 1 second. That is where you use a 6-stop ND filter. If you still want to go further down, you add another 3-stop ND filter. So 1 second will become half a second will become 1/4 of a second, 1/4 of a second will become, I made a mistake. So 1 second will become 2 second, 2 second will become 4 second, 4 second will become 8 seconds. So at 8 second, you will get a totally flat waveless sea. So that's where 3 stops and 6 stops really work. So totally 9 stops. So you come down from 1 by 30th of a second all the way up to 8 seconds.
Only thing to memorize is the aperture, now, doctor, because in aperture doesn't move sequentially. I mean, 2.8 to 4 is one stop. 4 to 5.6 is another.
It's very easy to remember it. See, all you have to remember is two words, two numbers, 1 and 1.4. So the next step is 2 and 2, which is a double of 1, and 1.4, the double of that is 2.8. So 1, 1.4, 2, 2.8, 4, 5.6, which is a double of 2.8. Then 8, which is a double of 4. And 5.6 double is 11.2, but they'll make it 11 because they round it off, and then keep on going. So it's, you just remember 1 and 1.4. These are the two values, so you can remember this whole sequence.
Oh, thanks. I didn't get that.
So that was the easy way of remembering apertures. Any other questions? ಸರ್ ಕೈ ಎತ್ತಿ, ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದ್ದರೆ.
So meanwhile, Krishi, I have a question. When you talk about the graduated ND filters, Now we do get it in various different shades or colors, as we call it. So this I know was used quite a lot in the film days for various
Yes,
reasons.
yes,
Do
yes.
we have something similar even for the digital cameras?
Now use after using softwares like Lightroom or Photoshop, uh, it's become redundant because you can just drag a gradient right from the top to the bottom. It really works. Now most of the time these gradient filter used to work well when you have a flat horizon like a sea or something. But if you are taking something like a mountains, so then your filters do not really, the lower end of the part of the filter does not really match the mountains shape. So it's again troublesome trying to clear out the mountain out of that darker areas and then make it brighter in post processing. So a lot of people don't really use it unless you are shooting something like totally flat skyline or totally flat seascape, that sort of thing. So even though I have these graduated ND filters, uh, I hardly use them in many of the places. But if you have a flat area in front of you, you can use it. Say if you go to Masai Mara or something where you have bright sky and a flat this thing, you can still use it. But in many of our locations where the sky is totally the skyline, the land to sky, that area is filled with either up and downs or mountains, then it's of not much of a use. It will give you more trouble in post processing than actually helping you.
So yeah, that's one of the things with graduated ND, wherein the gradation is almost in a straight line. So
Yes,
you need to look
yes,
for corresponding view to be able to use that.
yes, yes. There are two type of graduated ND filters. One is hard grad, which is hard cut, like from graduation and suddenly abruptly it stops and then clears out. The second one is a soft grad, which is comes down from say two stop at the top and drops down to one stop in the middle and then slowly becomes half a stop and then uh, sort of tapers it out. So that sort of tapered ones are called soft grad filters. Soft grad, to a certain extent you can use it. Hard grad is almost impossible now because post processing you can easily do that. A lot of people really don't use these graduated ND filters.
Doctor, just that you were talking about the polarized filter.
Mm.
The polarized filter is always useful in snow areas, right? When you
Yeah,
have the
snow
white
reflection
reflection also.
of evenings and mornings, wherever there is reflection, even the snow, it's basically the reflection of the snow.
Yeah.
So whenever there is a reflection, think of polarizing filter. And if you want to remove the reflection, so if you are looking through a pond or a clear water and you want that stones at the bottom of the river to really come out, then use polarizing filters. You can combine polarizing filter with the ND filters. They'll add one stop extra. So suppose you have a 3-stop ND filter, you add one polarizing filter, it will be a 4-stop loss of light. Any other clarifications, doubts? Prasanna sir, ಏನಾದ್ರು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದೆಯಾ? Girish, you have any questions?
Prasanna Shailesh ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ he is asking.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
inviting
okay.
him.
Yeah. ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿ ಸರ್, ಅನ್ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ.
N- Namaste, Prasanna sir. Okay. Why?
Unmute ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ವಾ ಅಂತ.
While he accepts the invitation. So, Krishi, one more question that I have is, when we use multiple filters, uh, for example, let us say I want to combine a normal ND filter with a graduated ND filter. Would that still work?
Yeah, it still works. It still works. I have used it in that way also. Normal ND filter will cut down overall amount of light, and only the sky portion will get extra 1.5 to 2 stops of light cut. So you will get a graduated ND filter plus more effect, plus whatever filter you have put. So that sort of effect comes. And invariably, most of the
Fantastic.
time, when in the bright sky, you are trying to cut down. Sky is much brighter than the land or the sea. So in such a case, these things really work. Seascape photography, I usually use this neutral density filter along with graduated neutral density filter together. So they cut down the sky part, because there the horizon is very flat, so it's very easy to get that effect. And you can pull that. That's only possible with the square filters. So that's why you can slightly pull and push your graduated ND filter to area where you can exactly make out through the viewfinder where the sky is, and then put a normal
Right.
neutral density filter in front of it. Because after you put a ND filter, the either 3 stops or 6 stops, you won't be able to see through the viewfinder effectively. So you adjust your graduated first, and then you put a ND filter.
Okay. Anybody else would like to ask questions? Please raise your hands.
How many of you still use UV filters? How many of you are still using UV filters? I'm curious. Just let me know.
Well, at least I stopped using UV filter a long time ago when I shifted to digital.
Yes.
Krishi, one more thing.
You can.
So,
One
sorry,
second.
go ahead, Srikandar.
No,
Kelly
I was
Srikandar.
just joking that you can use that UV filter. I use the UV filter not for photography, but as a lens cover.
Yeah, I think a lens hood is a better lens cover than a UV filter. Only in cases where there is lot of dust. For example, bike rally or something where lot of dust comes. Those are the places where you use a UV filter. But other than that, take out the UV filter when you're shooting.
True.
Yeah, Girish, your question.
Yeah. So my question was, when we use the ND filter, like one of the major things is when we want to darken the sky. But if we have a cloudy day, how would the ND filter help us? Would it actually help us take a slow shutter image of the clouds? Would the ND filter help in such a situation?
It doesn't interfere with the cloud formation. Uh, it only reduces the shutter speed. Think of reducing overall light. So the clouds will still be visible exactly as they are. Suppose depending on the shutter speed. For example, if you take a very fast shutter speed, say 1/30th, your clouds will be exactly like how you see in the normal eyes. But if you take the same shot at 4 seconds uh, level, your clouds will be moving, and that movement of the cloud is visible in your picture, and you can see that the slow movement of the cloud, and they become blurry in the sense blur due to movement, not due to out of focus. So that gives you a nice look to a landscape photograph. So that's the advantage of using a slow shutter speed in a landscape photograph, where you can emphasize that there is a movement of clouds. Even if it is a dense rainy cloud, you can still make out that movement because of the slow shutter speed. But the quality of cloud formation doesn't really change.
Okay, great. Yeah.
And if you use
Anybody
polarizer,
would like sorry, go ahead,
Girish,
Krishi.
if you use polarizer on the cloud, you can really enhance it, because the sky and the cloud, suppose sky still has light and it's bluish, uh, will become more bluish when you use a polarizer on the sky by rotating the polarizer. So you can really make the cloud really stand out from the sky, or sky really stand out from the cloud, whichever way you look at it.
Got it. When we talk about the rays from the sky, they're pretty much, in one way it is unidirectional apart from the dispersion because of the, atmospheric gases
Element, yeah.
that are there. But in a cloud scenario, the dispersion of the light rays is much more, right?
Much more, yes, much more. That's where the polarizer really helps, because it's going to
Right.
cut down those lights, make the cloud darker, apparently look darker,
Correct. Yeah.
because the dispersion is
Yes.
much more, and you are cutting one wavelength of light using the polarizer. So your camera doesn't see that wavelength of light at all. It is seeing only the other set of light. So that's why it's much more useful to use polarizer to get that slightly darker sky as well as darker cloud.
Okay. ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳೋದಿದೆಯಾ? Please raise your hands so that I can bring you into the speakers panel. ಯಾಕೋ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಭಯ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ಕೃಷಿ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ.
ಇಲ್ಲ, ಏನು
ಯಾರು
ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ
ಕೈ
ಕೇಳಿ ಇದ್ರ
ಎತ್ತಲ್ಲ.
ಬಗ್ಗೆ. ಗಿರೀಶ್, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದೆಯಾ?
One minute. Shajin has raised his hand.
Yeah, Shajin.
Yes, Shajin, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So, like, which brand would you recommend, like, for square filters out of?
Square filters. Okay. I personally use Haida filters. These are reasonably priced among the filters, as well as the quality is excellent. I use a square filter. They have 100 Pro, they call it. That's one of the series, and then they recently came up with the M10 series of filters, where the polarizing filter can be taken out or dropped into the square mount. So that's a latest version, but both are fine. The filters work universally between both of these uh, mounts. These are square mounts for the lens. So Haida is one of them. If you want a slightly higher range, you can go for Nisi. Nisi also makes beautiful filters as well as the mount. But one thing is, you have to stick to that particular company once you buy the mount, because even though filter size is identical, sometimes there is slight gap between uh, the individual slot and the filter. If you change from, let's say that the leaf filter also makes 100 filters. So if you are using a leaf filter on a Haida mount, there'll be a slight problem. So I think you have to stick to that particular company and mount. I usually recommend Haida, because the quality of the filters are good, and price wise they are reasonable, not very expensive. I don't think they are cheap, but they're good.
Okay,
So
thank you.
we are talking about $8,000 for the filter mount, and then depending
Uh,
on the ND
yeah, if
stops
you're
we are
if you're going for M10, it's around 8,000 to 10,000, and if that comes with the polarizing filter within that.
correct.
And if you go for the 100 Pro, I think it's slightly cheaper, about 6 or 7,000 rupees, that range. That's a filter mount, and then you have to buy 6 stops or 3 stops. So two of the filters, 6 stop and three stop. That's usual recommendation. Don't go for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and that sort of filters. So just buy 3 stops, which is a standard when there is little light. For example, you're gone during the sunset period and you want to have a long shutter speed photography, or you're gone to a waterfall where there is lot of shade, then 3 stop is just good enough. Or if it's brighter light, you need to have a 6 stop, and you can combine both of them. So 6 and 3 is ideal. So I think that's a combination which is good.
So budget of 15K.
15k, 15 to 18k, around 15 to 18k total. If you have a lesser budget, you can just go for the screw-in type of filters, where the cost of the mount is reduced. So each screw-in filter will come at around 6,000. So within about 12,000, you can make out the whole thing. So it's between 12,000 or 18,000. So that's the only difference is the mount. Mount is one-time payment, but that's required for a square filter.
How much do the Nisi filters cost
This
approximately,
is
Krishi?
you can add about 2,000 rupees more than this, each of the filters. So it's around 10,000 rupees range, the DC filters, and
Okay.
the mount is slightly around 10,000. So overall, you get about for 25,000, that sort of thing. So imagine add
Okay.
2,000 for each one of them. So then slightly it goes up.
Yeah.
This is a better quality, as they advertise. I personally haven't used Nisi filter. I've seen others using Nisi filters. I didn't find much of a difference between one or the other.
Okay.
The main thing
How
what you have to
long?
look for is basically a shift of colors. So if there is no shift of colors, then it's fantastic. The ND filter should not shift your colors. Yeah, Shrikant, you were asking some questions.
Right.
Now, how long does this filter last during for normal
Uh,
use?
Okay, one is it's made up of glass, so if you drop it, it might break. But other than
I'm
that,
saying regular use, putting it in, putting it out.
yeah, it'll last because these are hardened glasses. So scratch is not really a big issue. But if you drop it on a stone or something, they'll crack and they will break. It's like a lens. So for a normal use, I've been using Haida for last 6 years now. So the same set of filters are being used, and they're quite fine. Absolutely no issues. I'm using slightly better quality filter than the basic ones. I'm using what is called a nano pro coating. They have a particular coating on top of that. They have three varieties. Haida has basic optical filters. Then they have this nano pro series, and then there is one more which is the expensive one, which is called a red diamond series, which is hardened to almost 10 times the normal glass level. So it's a very hard material. That's why they think like a diamond. So they called it as a red diamond series. The glass looks reddish, but the the effect does not alter the overall color combination, this thing at all. So it's neutral density filter as far as final images concerned.
We are nearing the end of the session, so if any of you have a question, please do raise your hands so that we can bring you up to the speakers panel.
We'll continue for 5 minutes and then.
Yeah, yes, Krishi.
By the way, I bought before meeting you. I had bought those circular filters.
Filters, yeah.
Then and while in the workshop, I realized that I can't focus with the mirrorless with the filter on.
Yes.
So
So
I printed a mount. So my circular filter is now a square filter.
you can do that. With the 3D printers now available, you can print a mount and make it into a circular to a square
Square
filter.
filter.
Yes.
Doctor, while we are at that adapter ring, there is one warning I think is necessary, that if you put it wrong thread, then that removing it out is very expensive, because you take it to the Sony guys, they will charge you to change the lens itself.
A circular filter always, any of the circular filters, I'm talking about, say a UV filter you have or a polarizing filter you have, don't over tighten your filters at all. There is no need to over tighten any filter, because the light leak between those threads is almost impossible. So don't over tighten. Then one more thing, what happens is, if a filter has fallen down, then the thread would have slightly dented, so that again causes a problem when you tighten it. So I've seen quite a lot of people who came with the UV filter with the dented thread, and they just couldn't remove the UV filter at all from uh, the normal lens. So it was pretty difficult. So the one of the way how we can remove it is using these cycle tubes, the rubber. You apply that on top of the filter and then use that to slowly rotate the glass. That grips that particular filter very well, and then you can remove it. So you have to make a sleeve out of the bicycle tube.
I think there are no questions coming.
Yeah, people are afraid to
Yeah.
ask me questions, I think. Don't worry, I won't eat you. So please ask questions.
Yeah, there is Yashodhara Ravi who would like to
Okay,
ask, and
yeah.
also Mallikarjun.
Yeah, please. ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದು, ತೊಂದರೆ ಇಲ್ಲ. Mallikarjun, please go ahead.
Mallikarjun, we have invited you. ಏನಾದರೂ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದ್ದರೆ ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗಿ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದು.
ಯಶೋಧರ್, ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿ.
ಯಶೋಧರ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ನಾನು ಇನ್ವೈಟ್ ಕಳಿಸಿದೆ. So yeah, looks like nobody wants to, or rather nobody has questions right now.
Yeah, I think there is no question.
Yep.
I think there is an ND filter on the questions.
No, nothing of that sort of thing.
It looks like a 10-stop ND filter, Srikanth.
ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿ. ಕ್ಲಬ್ ಹೌಸಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಜವಾಗಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕಷನ್ ಆದರೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಇಲ್ಲದಿದ್ದರೆ ಇದು ಬರೀ ಒನ್ ವೇ ಟಾಪಿಕ್. ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಉಳಿದವ್ರು ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಆದರೆ ಸರಿಯಾಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಕೇಳಿದರೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ನಿಜವಾಗಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಏನು ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಅದರಿಂದಾಗಿ ಉತ್ತರ ಕೊಡಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಇದೇ ರೀತಿ ಆದರೆ ಆ್ಯಸ್ ಎ ಸ್ಪೀಕರ್ ನನಗೂ ಬೋರ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ
ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ನಾನು ಕೇಳ್ತೇನೆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ
ಕೇಳಿ
ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ.
ಕೇಳಿ.
ಇದು ND ಫಿಲ್ಟರ್ ಹಾಕುವಾಗ ಒಂದು ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್ ರಿಯಲಿ ಲೋ ಶಟರ್, ವಿ ಶುಡ್ ಯೂಸ್ ದಿ ಟೈಮರ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಕ್ಯಾಮ್ರಾ ಟು ಪ್ರೆಸ್ ದ ಶಟರ್ ಬಟನ್ ಸೊ ದಟ್ ದೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ನೋ ಶೇಕ್. ಐ ಮೀನ್ ಇದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ
ಓಕೆ. ಟೈಮರ್ 10 ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಟೈಮರ್ ನಿಜವಾಗಿ ಇಟ್ಟರೆ ಡೆಫಿನೆಟ್ಲಿ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಯಾಕಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ನಾವು ಶಟ್ರನ್ನು ಪ್ರೆಸ್ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಕ್ಯಾಮ್ರಾ ನಿಜವಾಗಿ ಅಲ್ಲಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ಅಲ್ಲಾಡಿದ್ದು ಈ ಸ್ಲೋ ಶಟರ್ ಸ್ಪೀಡಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಜವಾಗಿ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಇಮೇಜ್ ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಕ್ರಿಸ್ಪಾಗಿ ಬರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನೀವು ರಿಮೋಟ್ ಟ್ರಿಗರ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಅಥವಾ ನೀವು ಶಟರ್ ಸ್ಪೀಡನ್ನು ಸೆಲ್ಫಿ ಮೋಡಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಕಿ. ಅಂದರೆ ಲಾಂಗ್ ಶಟರ್ ಸ್ಪೀಡ್ ಪ್ಲಸ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಟೈಮರ್ ಹಾಕಿ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೆಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ. ಸೊ 2 ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಅಥವಾ 10 ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಆದ ನಂತರ ಅದು ತನ್ನಷ್ಟಕ್ಕೆ ಕ್ಲಿಕ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಆ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ಶೇಕ್ ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅದನ್ನು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಡೆಫಿನೆಟ್ಲಿ ಲಾಂಗರ್ ಶಟರ್ ಸ್ಪೀಡ್. ಎನಿಥಿಂಗ್ ಲೆಸ್ ದೆನ್ 1/30th of a second ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಯೂಸ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಟೈಮರ್.
सो ऐसा भी क्वेश्चन पूछा जा सकता है भाई लोग.
ಹಿಂದಿಯಲ್ಲೂ ಕೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ಮಲ್ಲಿಕಾರ್ಜುನ್ ಅವರೇ, ನೀವು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿ. ಸರಿ, ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ವಿಲ್ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಎ ಡೇ.
I think I think we can close the session.
So thank you everybody. So see you next time. I'll think of a topic which will interest you as well as make you ask questions for the next Wednesday. Girish, will you be there on the next Wednesday? I think you will not be there.
No, the next Wednesday I'll be traveling, Krishi.
Traveling, yeah. Okay, fine. Shrikant will be there.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if there is network, I can think of joining if we are not out shooting.
Sure.
Otherwise,
No,
I'll be
take
missing
your
the
time.
next week's session.
Next week's. We'll see. We'll decide on what topics to use. Thank you everybody. See you on next Wednesday. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you everybody. See you next week.